Alright, I'm going to set up some blueprints over in my blueprint folder. I'm going to do 3 blueprints, and the button, the gate, and the end tile. So let's go ahead and get going on that. So make an actor blueprint, and we'll call this BP blueprint button. I'll make another one. Another actor blueprint. We'll call this one BP gate. And I'll make one more, and we'll call this one BP end tile. Alright, going ahead and save those. So let's get to the button first, and I'm going to kind of drag this out to make it easy to drop stuff into. I'll go to my meshes, and I'm going to, in my components, going to drop my gate base, or button base. We'll call that button base. And then I'll also drag in the button itself, and we'll call that button. Alright, and then you can see, they were modeled in place, so they sit right on top of each other just fine. The other thing that I want to add is a box. This box is going to be a trigger volume, and it's really small, so I'm going to make it bigger. Let's say 5 by 5 by 5, and then move it up. So that takes care of what the button looks like. I like it. Save it. Okay, let's go over to the graph, and one thing I want to be able to do is set the materials on these gates whenever you place it into the level. So that's what or the button. So that's what we're going to do first. Alright, so let's go ahead and set the base first. Now remember, the base has, and we'll look at the mesh here for the base and for the button. So the base has 2 materials on it, one animated glow material and one solid color. So we're going to have to be able to set both of those. Now the button has the same thing, solid color and a glow material. So we're just going to use the same material for both of those since they're always going together. So I'll bring in the button first, and I'll get it. What I'm going to do is set the material, and I'll take my material here and we're going to promote that to a variable, and we're going to call this button glow material. Alright, so one thing to note about the glow material, if we look at the button, is the glow material is on element index 1. So here we're going to set our element index to 1. So this is going to be the button glow material. Okay. Then I want to set the button base, and that button base is going to also have its set material. And again, if we look at the button base, we know that the glow material is on element 1. So we're going to use the same material, element 1. Alright. So here's the deal. We're going to have a glow material, and it is going to have a default to it. And I'm going to go ahead and set the glow material default to our blue. But this will enable anybody to set it to green or red or yellow or whatever. You have to make it public so it'll show up whenever you drop it into the scene. Alright, one thing I want to do while setting the button glow material is I want to check if it's set to anything besides the default. So I'm going to do a branch, and if the glow material, after you've set it in the scene, if you've reset it to anything other than the default material, if it's, which makes it not equal, so if the glow material is not equal to its default, that'll set this to true, and we'll go ahead and set the material, the glow material of the button and the button base glow material. Alright, so that takes care of that, but I kind of want to do this with the base material too, and we'll use the same rules. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and do a sequence, and then basically I'm going to do the exact same thing, except for material. We're going to set the material on element 0. So we'll leave that as 0. And we'll do this for the base as well. Set material. I'll go ahead and promote this to a variable. We'll call this button base material. How's that? Make it public. We have to compile it so we can set our default, and we'll just keep it on that blue plastic for now, and that'll be both. Alright, we're going to do the same check on our button base material. So if it is not equal to the default, that'll set this to true, and it'll go ahead and set the base material. Alright, so let's save that and see what that looks like whenever we drop it in the level. So when we drop it in the level, it looks like we'll be able to reset the glow material and the base material as we see fit. That way, if you have a level that's primarily based on green, you can make it green or whatever. Alright, now let's look at some functionality. Go back to our graph and event graph. Alright, so now we know that we have a trigger volume here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an event on this trigger volume, and we'll add a collision event on begin overlap. Alright, well, I kind of want to do two things here. One, I want to fire off a sequence or an event that will move the gate, and we'll put that on the gate blueprint. But I want to make it look like the button is being pressed. So I'm going to add a timeline. Whoops. I am going to add a timeline. And this timeline is going to be called press button. And what I'm going to do on this timeline is I am going to put a vector track on there. We'll change this to maybe 0.25 in length. I'm going to add a keyframe at the beginning and the end of it. So at time 0 we'll be at 0, and then let's say, and I'm using the Z track only, so I'm going to hide X and Y, and so on the end at 0.25 I'm going to make this -8. So when this timeline plays, it'll take 0.25 seconds, and it'll go from 0 to 8. Alright. So, oops, go back to my event graph. Alright, so when I begin overlap, I'm going to play this, and I'm going to take the button. So I'm going to get my button and set relative location. So this relative location is going to get his new values from track 2 right into there. So every update it's going to go from 0 to -8. So what it's going to do is it's going to take that button and make it look like it's pressing down 8 units. Alright, you know what would be cool is if I took this trigger volume, added another event, and that is on end overlap. I'm just going to take this and play it in reverse. So there you go. Alright, now let's do a gate blueprint so we can have a couple of blueprints that talk to each other. Alright, again, I'm going to drag my mesh in there on my components. We'll use the single gate as a default. There you go. Alright, I think I want to do the same thing with the gates. No, I don't think I know. I want to do the same thing with the gates that I did with the others, and that is to give the ability to change the materials on this whenever you drop it into the level. So that is going to make it to where whenever I take the gate blueprint and drop it in the level, I can set the base and the glow material. Obviously nothing's set in the default yet, so let's go back here and set default base material. We'll make it the blue, and default glow material will be the glow material. Okay, so now we've got a gate and a button set up. Let's make our gate do something, shall we? Alright, so on our event graph for the gate, let's set up a, we're going to rotate the gate, so we're going to need a new variable, and we'll call this rotate amount. This is going to be the type is going to be a rotator, because this is going to go set relative location or rotation later, so we're going to make this a rotator. This also we want it to be a public variable, because when you drop a gate in, you might want it to rotate -90 degrees, +90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 for some weird reason if you're into that sort of thing. So that's why we're making that public. Alright, so let's do a new timeline. And we'll call this rotate gate. Okay, so this, I think I just want to do a float track, and we'll call this rotate % to make it easy. So 0 to 1, and it's going to take, let's say, half a second. Let's add a key at the beginning and at the end. And so we'll go from 0 to 0.5 and 1. Alright, so 0 to 1 in 0.5 seconds. Pretty quick. Okay, what do we want to do with that? Well, we want to take our rotate amount. We want to take the gate. And then what we're going to first do, or end up doing, is we're going to set relative rotation of the gate every time this timeline updates. Okay? Alright, so out of our timeline, we're doing a float amount, 0 to 1, so it's going to be our percentage of rotation, which is going to take the, we're going to linear interpolate between 0 and the rotate amount. So let's put in a lerp here, but it's going to be a lerp rotator, and we're going to leave A the same. We're going to put in our rotate amount on B, and then the alpha is going to drive our interpolate amount between 0 and 1, 1 being 100% of this amount. That is going to go into our new rotation. So whenever we rotate the gate, it's going to, from 0 to 1, go from 0 yaw really to whatever we set in our rotate amount. Let's set our default for our rotate amount, and we'll do yaw at 90%. Don't touch roll and pitch because then your gate will get all wonky. We're going to rotate on yaw only. Alright. Well, what's going to do this? Let's create an event, custom event, and let's call this trigger the gate. So when we trigger the gate, we want to play, but if we hit the button again, let's make it trigger the gate back the other way. So we're going to do a flip-flop. Alright, so when you first hit the button, it's going to play. Whenever you roll off the button and then roll back into it again, it's going to play the other way. So you can toggle a gate one way and then the other way. Alright, that makes sense. Now we have a event to trigger on the gate that we need to put on the button. Alright, for that we're going to need a new variable, and this variable is going to be called gate array, and I want to make it an array because I want to be able to fire or control more than one gate with a single button. This blueprint, or this variable, is going to be based on blueprint. So if we just search for, I named it BP button, I'm sorry, gate. We're on the button. So there's my gate array. We'll make that public, and there you go. Alright, so because I want to do two things whenever I hit the trigger volume, one is making the button look like it's being pressed. I also want to do, let's put this here. Alright, so here I'm going to get the array, and then whenever, because this is connected to my gate blueprint, I can just type in the name of the event, which is trigger the gate, and this sequence will hit that. Alright, so on overlap, I am going to trigger the gate in my gate blueprint, which is going to rotate the gate to whatever amount we set. Cool thing is, this is an array, so we'll be able to choose multiple gates. And at the same time as I trigger the volume, I'm going to make it look like the little button is pressed. Alright, you know, I can just play. It doesn't have to be play from start. Alright, we'll save that. Now let's go ahead and drop the gate in there. We already did. So you'll see that we have now gate array on our button. I want to go ahead and add an element, and let's pick this gate. So now I have BP gate, and that gate is right there. I have my rotate amount. We'll leave it at 90 degrees right now. So I want to go ahead and play this, and whenever I roll over this gate, that should rotate. Perfect. Love it. Alright, let me move this over. I want to take a second. I'll take a second in a second. Let's go ahead and add another gate. If we go back to our button, we can add another gate. We'll do this gate just for fun. Let's put a third gate in there, and we'll add, so this is our gate array, remember, on our button, so we can control more than one gate with a single button. Cool part about that is each gate is its own blueprint dropped in the scene, so we can do like -90 on this one and 180 degrees on this one. And whenever I play now, I'm going to roll over the button, and those three gates will do their own thing. whenever I roll over the button again, they're going to go back where they came from. Kind of hard to tell, but that little button is pressing. You could see it barely move whenever I roll off of it. So we know our little button is animated too. Maybe unnecessary at this distance, but I think it's pretty cool anyway. All right, I want to take a quick second to go over my ball pawn, which is the default physics ball blueprint that came with our rolling starter thingy. And this is you know, it right here. Okay, so in construction or on your components, you would normally see the ball, a spring arm, and a camera. And what I wanted to do is have a static camera while you roll the ball around. And so I took the spring arm out, and so the camera's kind of disconnected, and I kind of set it up at an aerial view so you'll be able to see the whole maze. So your ball pawn will move, but your camera won't. One of the big things about being able to do that, because if you simply just take the spring arm out, what's going to happen is you start rolling around and the whole scene starts rolling around because your camera is linked to your ball. So you set the absolute location and rotation to world instead of relative, because it's relative by default, which means it'll follow the rotation and the location of the ball. So by setting both of these, rotation and location to world, it kind of disconnects the camera from your ball. Alright, one more blueprint to go, and that's the end tile. Let's go to our components, drop our end tile in here. We'll call it end tile, and we'll do the exact same thing that we've done in all the other ones, and we're going to let you drop this in and change the material on it. And that one. Alright, so now we have that done. Again, let's go back to components. We're going to need to add a box in here, and this box will be end tile trigger volume. So the end tile trigger volume, we're going to have to blow it up so you can see it. I think 777 is a good size. And there we go. You know what? Let's make this 5.5. That way the ball has to really be on the tile, because you know, if you do on begin overlap, it doesn't have to be all the way on. I might even take this down to 3 and 3 to make sure that you're on it. Alright, you convinced me. 4.4. Okay, so now we have a trigger volume. If we go back to our graph, take our trigger and add an event for that. Our collision is going to be on begin overlap. Alright, so this is where we're going to stop on this tutorial, because we're not going to stop. We're going to keep going, but I want a lot to happen whenever you hit the end tile, and it's really going to be all based on the ball pawn, and we'll get to that later. But for now, just to make sure that this is working, let's do a print string and say level ended. Alright, we'll go ahead and drop that blueprint into our scene here. Put that at 0, and let's do a play and roll our ball around. The ball's going real slow. We're gonna have to change that a little bit. So gates work, and boom, level ended. So we know everything works as far as these blueprints go. One last thing on the ball. I don't want a jump. There's a couple of ways to take care of that. One is to go into your project settings and go to your input, and on action mapping I can just delete the jump. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it would be to simply delete all this. And since there's no jump, re-enable jumping on landing can be taken away. So really all we're looking at here is rolling right and left, which we're going to play with a little while later. Alright, we noticed our ball was going a little slow, so this is a big number. Let's add another 0 in there and see what happens. Alright. Oh, let's compile that. Oops, sorry. Okay. Alright, that's a bit better. That's much more responsive. Maybe a little too fast, but we'll play with that. Alright, so for the next video I want to go over some stuff that we're going to put on the ball pond and start creating a level and testing some stuff out. So thanks for watching and being patient with me, and we'll see you next time.